Through my short 21 years on Earth, the two biggest things that I've realized that set someone up for success in whatever their own definition is two things, right? The first is finding what you're curious about. If it's talking to people, if it's, photography, whatever, find what you're curious about, and the gap year may be an awesome time to do that. Yeah. The second thing is a growth mindset, right? Try and accumulate this feeling that you can do anything you want to do, anything that you set your mind to, and you're only constrained by your work ethic.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being molded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young podcast. Today I have another awesome episode for you with another amazing young guest. I have loved bringing on younger people lately, and this episode is a great example of why. Today I'm joined by good friend Sachin. Sachin is one half of the Sachin and Adam Show podcast, which is a podcast that explores the lives of two university students curious about learning from interesting people. Adam and Sachin have conversations with a diverse range of guests, including entrepreneurs, philosophers, activists, fitness icons, to name a few. Sachin is a Sydney uni student who is passionate about social justice and closing the gap of inequality, and today we chat about his life. We chat about how growing up with a younger brother with cerebral palsy inspired him to do more, how he travelled around the world after school with his best mate, starting his podcast, how he's built hundreds of amazing connections using a simple coffee strategy. We later on get onto basic economics and break down a communist society and a capitalistic society and so much more. So you are in for an awesome episode today, and as per usual, if you get any value from this episode or from the show, please consider leaving a review or a rating. Let me know what you think, and don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram with any questions. Finally, just before we get started, I am setting up an exclusive Facebook group for those of you who enjoy the show. This group will be relatively small. I don't plan to advertise it too much, but if you're a fan of the show and want to get direct access to me and direct access to other amazing people, I already have a bunch of people who have reached out to me who want to join the group and are super keen to connect with other like-minded individuals. I will also be going live regularly with Q&As, and I plan to do a lot more cool stuff, and that will all be from within the group in the future. I also plan to use it as a platform so I can talk to you guys and ask you questions and get to know who you want me to bring on the show and what sort of topics you would love for me to cover. So if you are interested, head over to www.drivenyoung.com/group, or you can click on it and it will be in the description of this episode. Now, over to Sachin. Sachin, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to say before we start that your audience is getting so much value. Like, I was binge watching everything you were putting on before this, and like, Jesus Christ, like if I had this when I was like 16 or 17, who knows what I'd be doing now.
Thanks, man. And same with you. Like, obviously that's why we connected, because we're doing similar stuff.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun.
No, it's so much fun. Like, I think that people like think it's like a job, but it's almost like a hobby. Like, it's just like something we'd probably both do in our spare time.
Yeah. And like, I mentioned it to you. I think I'm about to cross 1,500 hours I've spent on the podcast.
Wow.
And I've made a single dollar yet.
Yeah.
And like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like,
you probably learn a heap, right?
I've learned so much, which I've made money through osmosis of the podcast.
Yeah.
But I haven't made money directly through the podcast. I've made money because I've made connections with people and they've signed up to my business or something. I plan to monetize it in the next year or so, but it's not a priority, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something we'll get into today.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. I ask every guest what they did after high school, just to kind of get that perspective of what they did and what you're currently up to.
Yeah.
A little bit about you.
Yeah, sweet. So I'll go a little bit before high school just to start.
Yeah, easy.
So I was born in Sydney, Australia, lived a pretty, normal middle class upbringing. But my brother actually has cerebral palsy. And growing up with a brother with a disability, at the time, I didn't know it was anything different. Like,
what is, do you want to explain what cerebral
palsy is? Basically, there's so many different varying degrees of it. But for my brother, essentially, he's in a wheelchair. He can walk in a walking frame. And his muscles are extremely tight, right? But we're extremely lucky because my brother is mentally very good. He finished HSC, did really well. He's going to university now. But growing up with a brother with a disability, I think made me a naive optimist, because my brother is the most positive person you've ever met, right? So every morning I'd get up, my brother would always be up before me with a smile on his face, getting ready with my family. My family unit just functions around my brother. And he's just grabbed life by the balls. Like, I just don't know how else to say it, because he, like, for example, 2 weeks ago, he'll go swim in an ocean pool. He swims very slowly, but he just does everything, right? He's been surfing, skiing. He's done a TEDx talk when he was 13, right?
Yeah, right.
And when you have a brother like that, I think that it kind of sets you up to have a very distinct mindset in life.
Because we mentioned before, it's kind of like, if my brother can do all this, what am I doing? What's my excuse?
Exactly. And it's just like and if your family unit operates around that, it's always like, let's create opportunity. Let's do some things. And when I've been doing some reflecting recently, I've actually realized that that's been a huge part of who I am today. So I went to school in North Shore, and then after high school, I decided to go to Sydney Uni. I always had this inclination within me that was very passionate about things like social justice. So from a young age, I remember when I was in year 12, we're in the prefect committee, right? And all the prefects are talking about within school issues and like, okay, when should we have our mufti day? When should we raise money for a new sports oval? And my brain just never worked like that. My brain was always thinking, okay, international, right? And I think I've been lucky because I've been able to travel a lot when I was young. And maybe it's me going back to my Indian heritage, but I was always thinking like, we have so much privilege here. Let's do things for overseas communities, right?
It's crazy how much privilege we have in Australia.
Exactly.
People are so blind to it as well.
I know.
They'll think, oh, we're so unlucky. It's like, if you're born in Australia, you're like immediately in the top 1% of wealth.
Exactly.
Even if you have so much poverty in Australia, you have no money, you're still wealthier than 99% of the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then that kind of led to me, like, when we were in the prefects, for example, it's always like, if we're spending 5-6 hours fundraising, why don't we do it for something overseas, right? Why don't we try and support kids that don't have access to education, water, food? And so from a young age, I think that was a very distinct part of my wiring. And so I thought I wanted to be a human rights lawyer. I was like, okay, that's how I can have my impact on the world. And I started to research the law subjects, and they were mostly like corporation law. And I was like, I'm not going to do this whole degree for one subject. And so my next passion was economics, right? And economics was something that I thought I could use to make a big impact on the world, potentially join the World Bank, do some things with development economics. And so I started my university journey, and I quickly realized that uni was an awesome place. I really loved it. My best friends are from there, but I really fell in love with entrepreneurship. And we were just chatting about it before, right? It's this amazing community where everyone is so driven. They all have a zest for life. They all kind of really want to create more of themselves.
And you get brought up when you're around those sort of people, because everyone wants to connect everyone.
Yeah.
And so like, you meet one person, they'll connect you to someone, and then you get a whole group, and you just get lifted up as opposed to pulled down with negative people.
And everyone's so open, right? Like, we got lunch or coffee the other day, and it's just like, when you connect with someone, you immediately go to like the good parts of a conversation. There's none of this, oh, what school did you go to? It's not like a transactional conversation. It's pretty open and raw, and that's what I really liked about it. So in my first year of uni, I decided to start a tutoring company with my friend, and that was just a natural extension of the tutoring we were already doing. But it was more to get into this community.
And dipping your toes into entrepreneurial waters.
Exactly. And so when I went to networking events, I'd have something to talk about. I'd be like, okay, I started this. I'm not just some other 18-year-old that saw a Mark Zuckerberg Facebook documentary and wanted to become a billionaire. Like, I was like, okay, we can actually do this.
But more importantly, just linking back to what you said, sorry. You went, I want to do social justice.
Yeah.
So you went why, and then you went how.
Exactly.
Which I think is the way to do it. You need to figure out what do you want to do and why, and then you figure out the how.
Exactly.
Whereas so many people go to uni because they just want to do the how. And the why might be because they want to get money, or because that's what we're told to do. Whereas you had a core, deep why, and you went, how can I get this? Well, let's have a look at being a lawyer. Actually, no, it's not that. Let's have a look at doing economics. Or how about this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there, because it's super powerful.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I've never thought about it like that before. So that started the entrepreneurship journey, and there's something called social enterprise, which I soon discovered, which was actually the intersection between my love of business and also my love of social impact. And it was just like, one, you can make profit, and the whole thing is about creating a reoccurring revenue stream. And two, like, it's literally the best parts of, so the way I actually teach this right now for one of my jobs, but the way we describe it is you have a stereotypical business, think Westpac, and then you have a charity, think World Vision, right? Social enterprise is bang in the middle because it has a purpose for social impact, but it uses the business model to create a reoccurring revenue stream. And when I found out about that, I'm like, that's like the coolest thing that I've seen. So I got really interested in that concept. And as I mentioned before, that entrepreneurship, I then began reaching out to lots of different people. So I was like, hey, let's grab a coffee. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's grab lunch.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
Exactly.
And how old were you?
I was 18.
18. When you're 18 and you reach out to someone and say, hey, let's grab a coffee, but hey, really love what you're doing. I'd love to pick your brain or something. Yeah. That's like...
It's all about being genuinely curious, because all these people have a lot of people that reach out to them to get an internship, to get a job, and there's always that kind of thing in the back of their mind. But if you genuinely want to learn from someone, they're going to give you all the time that they can afford to give and as much value as they can. And I've developed some of my greatest mentors through doing that.
Yeah.
So that was the early second half of uni, the second year of uni, and then went away to exchange, had an amazing experience there with my best mate. And
where'd you go?
We went to Utrecht in the Netherlands.
Oh,
so
nice.
About 20 minutes away from Amsterdam. You can jump on bikes, go around.
Bikes. I think I have there's more bikes than people in the Netherlands.
Exactly. Yeah, there is. And even then, we were reaching out to people. We met the local entrepreneurs in Netherlands and stuff like that. And even two random Aussie guys who were obviously going to go home soon. People still happy to talk to us.
Yeah.
It just... I think that if there's one thing that people that are young should be doing, it's reaching out and talking to people.
It's opening doors. It's a concept we call the 1,000 doors. So if you reach out to someone, that's opening a door, and behind that door might be 1,000 other doors.
Yeah.
So you reach out to one person, and they'll be like, you know what? I know someone who you might be interested in talking to.
Exactly.
They introduce you to that person, and then they open you up to their whole network, and then there's 1,000 doors. It's just being... And the curious part is so important because, as you mentioned, how many people will go, they'll go on LinkedIn, it's like, how do I get an internship? Well, I need to connect with the person who can get me to this person. And I'll go to him and say, hey, did you want to grab coffee? You just want to grab coffee so you can build rapport with them so that you can get your foot in the door.
Exactly.
Which is okay, I guess. But
it's better than nothing.
If you're doing, it's better than nothing. But if you're doing it out of genuine curiosity where you actually want to learn from them, you're probably going to, we say the fastest way to open doors is to open doors for other people.
Yeah.
So if you want to open doors for yourself, open doors for other people, and they'll naturally open doors for you.
I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, do it. Go ahead.
That literally did open up thousands of doors. And not only that, is also when you're one-on-one with someone, you learn a lot about yourself. Also, you can learn about them, but you also learn about how you tell your own story, how you connect with other people. And what I've learned through all those interactions, and this can even go through things like dating and making friends, is vulnerability is the best way to make connections. So if you go up to someone and let's say me and you meet for coffee, and I start off with the usual oh, what's your name? What have you done? Blah, blah,
How's
blah,
your day?
Blah. Yeah. So I think that's good initially to build rapport, but in those first 10 to 15 minutes, I aim to say something kind of polarizing or something open about myself. So I may tell you, okay, look, I went on this date last week with this girl. It didn't really work out. And that immediately...
That's good.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It immediately builds a connection between me and you, right?
Because now I'll want to share something personal about me because you've just done it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I actually learned that from my dad because when my friends would come over after school and stuff, he'd always make juice for them and stuff and have a chat with them. But he'd always say something a little bit, I don't want to say polarizing, but a little bit lame. And once you and if you both laugh about it, that immediately levels up your connection, right? I encourage everyone to try that out. Just try and say something a little bit polarizing, a little bit lame, a bit that shows that you're both human, and then you can establish that raw kind of connection.
Stay away from the boring functional conversations that everyone has. And I'd say I did this on the relationships episode. It's if you want to stand out on Tinder or on online dating, don't say, hey, how was your day? Mine was good, thanks. It's say something that's more banter. It's more fun.
Yeah.
Get to know them at a deeper level as opposed to just what they do and what they study.
A one that I like to ask is if you had one day left, how would you spend it? And immediately from that answer, you can get a real sense of someone's values.
Yeah.
And then let's say your answer to that, you say, I want to wake up at 5:30 a.m. and go for a cup of coffee and work on something myself. That immediately tells me so much about you. And then we can dive into more self-development stuff. Yeah. We can dive into the community because that's something that may be important to you, right? There's so many places you can go from questions like that are value-based.
The best question that I think you can ever ask someone is similar to that, but it's what would you do differently if you were going to die in 5 years?
Yeah.
Because the thing about a day is it's cocaine, strippers, I'm just going to go nuts. I've got a day left to live.
Yeah.
I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah.
5 years is long enough that you can't just go holidays for a year. You're not going to just holidays, beat up your body for a year.
Exactly.
because you might do it for a year, but then you've got to start doing something. Because it's a long enough period where you've actually got to do something that's meaningful. And so it's like, if you had 5 years left to live, would you keep doing your office job, or would you try something else, or would you take a risk or something?
Yeah.
So when you're young, I think that's the mentality you should have.
Yeah.
Because I say this all the time, take risk while you're young, because if you fail, you're still living at home. You know, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have debt probably, you might have some uni debt, but it's pretty small compared to if you're 35 with kids and a family and a new car loan and mortgage and everything.
Yeah.
So like,
this is going to be the
that.
least risk-adverse points in our whole life, right?
Yeah.
So you want to try and maximize them. And you hear that from people older than you, right? You've probably developed this mentality from talking to people older than you. They're like, I wish I did this when I was younger.
Yeah.
And we had the opportunity to kind of rectify that. And that comes down to what we try and do in our podcast, which I think is very similar to you, is that all these people have lived amazing lives older than us, right? And they've all made mistakes. We're going to make mistakes as well in our life, but let's make different ones, right? Let's stand on the shoulder of giants and make different mistakes to the ones that the other people did.
Follow the recipe. Brent, who I've connected with, he does personal development for young people. He's got 6 pillars, which he teaches them. One of the pillars is follow the recipe. Why would you make the same mistakes as everyone else when they can tell you not to? Just follow the blueprint.
Yeah.
Follow what works.
Yeah.
You're still going to make mistakes, and then you'll pass it on to the next generation.
Exactly.
And so that hopefully they won't make those mistakes, and you just go on and on.
Yeah. And coming back to like a kind of nerdy commentary, because I study economics finance, right? Is that the more data points you have, the better prediction you can make.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And even if these people tell you something and it's not that relevant, right? Or it may not be the recipe you want to exactly follow, because the trends of the past aren't usually the trends of the future, right? You
Especially
still have data points to make a better prediction about what could work better for you in the future. So and so coming back to, so that was the coffee experience. I think everyone should have that, just reaching out to people.
But you and Adam, so Adam is your co-host for your podcast. We should clarify, you guys have a podcast.
Yeah.
But you and Adam, good mate of yours, you did a challenge where you'd reach out to 3 people a day.
Yeah, so 3 people a week. We just try and get coffees with people. We did that in the Netherlands as well, and that's how we met our mentors and stuff like that. That was honestly just people that are older than us.
Yeah.
So that was more the learning component. But now we've done that in other parts of our life where it's just people our age, just connecting with people. And as you said, even connections with people your own age, it builds that butterfly effect.
Yeah, and something I've had, if anyone listens to the show regularly, they'll probably notice over the past kind of 10 episodes, I've actually had a lot younger people come on, because I think it's so valuable. Even if it's like, how old are you now? 21. So the age gap between 16 and 21 is so big in terms of where you are in life. You're in high school, and now we both have a podcast. We're doing all this different stuff. Where I was at 16 is completely different. So there's so much you can learn from someone, and we know what people are going through.
Yeah.
I know that you guys are addicted to technology. I know mental health is massive for young people. I know what the HSC was like.
Yeah.
So I feel like we can try to play on that, and that's why I want to get younger people in, so we've got that perspective.
Yeah. No, I think it's an awesome idea. And then the whole exchange experience happened. And when I got back from exchange, I obviously had like a rough period for a bit, because I was like, exchanges in real life, right? You don't have any bills to pay.
Yeah.
You're traveling, you're meeting the same amount of people. I got back to Sydney and I was like, okay, what do I actually want to do now? I know there's all these things that I love doing. I love connecting with people. I love new experiences. I love getting out of my comfort zone, but how can I tie this all together? And that year was the first year in my life I decided to focus on who I wanted to be instead of what I wanted to do. And that changed my life.
Yeah.
Because in that year, I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on my values. I'm going to focus on the things I know set me up for the day. So an analogy I like to use is bottom up and top down, right? People have all these like ways to live a good life, but this is my way, right? So the bottom up comes with the things you do every day, right? The things that you owe to yourself to do. And for me, that's exercise. I'm addicted to exercise. I love it. It's my meditation. It's my cold shower, and it's my connecting with my friends, right? And if I do all those things on a daily basis and eat healthy, I feel really good from the bottom up, right? And then there's the top down. And the top down is what I call the why, which we mentioned at the start, which is what direction are you heading towards? I'm lucky enough that I got to know about this from a young age. And for me, it's that whole social impact piece, but it's also just learning more about people and bringing others up. I'm obsessed with equality of opportunity. Not equality of outcome, that's important because I'm not a communist, but equality of opportunity.
So am I. I'm so
that's
passionate.
what you're doing with your podcast,
yeah,
right?
I mean, that's why I don't want to monetize it, because I don't want to create a course that only wealthier people can afford. I don't want to create events where only the wealthier kids can get into, so now they learn more. I want to create something where the poorest kids can get into, so they can learn, so that they can try close that equality gap.
Yeah.
And in Australia, we're quite good because we
Yeah.
have healthcare and we have these things. But you look like America, and they'll be like, land of opportunity. Yeah, if you're born lucky and
Yeah.
you're one of the wealthier ones. But if you're born in poverty, it's so hard to break out of that.
Yeah, even in Australia, like
It is,
I used to think this. I was in my North Shore bubble, but I worked for a company called Young Change Agents, where we teach social enterprise and design thinking to disadvantaged Australians. And so I've traveled to communities, right? And you'd be surprised. I drive 30, 40 minutes from my house, and there's kids that can't afford school uniforms.
Yeah.
There's kids that can barely put food on the table, and that's something that I think a lot of us aren't exposed to. And so with the information that we both put out on our platforms, they can do their little bit to kind of rectify this equality of opportunity gap. Because I think everyone should have the information and the opportunities to do what they want.
Information is an excuse now. There's information at the thing. All you need is a phone that you could buy for $200 if you wanted to. You can get a job, save up. Surely you can get a phone somehow.
Yeah.
That's got all the information you'll ever need.
Yeah.
Whether it's at my podcast, your podcast.
Yeah.
A billion videos on YouTube or whatever
So much
it is.
out there. Yeah.
Like, information is everywhere. There's not really an excuse that you don't have enough information.
Yeah. Yeah, you can teach yourself so much from a podcast a day, a book every few days. But in saying that, I also think that self-development stuff can go a bit too far sometimes.
I was going to say that as well, yeah.
And so I went through a stage when I was on exchange where literally every spare minute I'd have a podcast on.
Yeah.
I'd be reading a book. I'd be talking to people. And I'm always thinking in my head, how do I get better? How do I get better? And I think that came from a point of not feeling good enough. And I had a reflection period. I'm like, I'm really happy with where I am right now. And I think that self-development is an awesome tool, but I encourage everyone not to go too hard with it because you lose the best parts of life.
It's a hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
And I was exactly the same. So I'd always do that. And now I'm just like, I usually, when I wake up, I listen to something on the way. Sometimes on home, I just want to relax and I'll play music or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't feel guilty
because
you're not,
right?
Yeah, 100%. And there's a whole book my mate's reading about the toxic world of like hustle culture sort of thing.
Yeah.
And because I agree, it's so amazing, but it can create a lot of guilt because like you should always be working. And people like, you shouldn't be working your ass off unless you're working towards something that's meaningful or is actually worth it.
That we're all just humans on a floating rock trying to find meaning, right?
Yeah.
And trying to find fulfillment. And so yes, hustling can do that in the short term, right? But in the long term, you need to be working towards something you actually care about, right? There's so many people that hustle on things they want to do. They don't get any sleep. They feel like shit, right? But what are we actually moving towards? And I think that's an important question to ask. And you'll see that people that are working hard, like as you do, as we probably do with our podcast, right? If they're working hard towards something they care about, there's probably not going to be a high chance of burnout, right? And you can do it in a sustainable way. But I agree, hustle culture can get toxic. And that led to a shift in me where I was like, every thought is about improving. But I realized that I read a book called The Power of Now. And there's this one line that stood out to me and changed my life. It says that we're constantly living in the past or the future, but our life is a series of nows. It's a now right now, it's a now in the future, but all that ever exists is this present moment. And if we're constantly living in the past or the future and thinking about what businesses we're going to build, what we're going to do in our past life, we're missing what life actually is, which is a present moment.
Yeah.
And that one line completely changed my life. And now whenever I'm with someone, whenever I'm not working on something, I just try and be present with it. It's hard, right?
It is hard. And as a podcast host, I'm always trying to do that. It's like just be 100% present with what they're saying.
Yeah.
The amount of times I'll like think of something to say and then they'll keep talking for another 2 minutes and I haven't listened because I want to bring up what I have to say.
Yeah.
It's like dangerous.
We have that as well. Like I actually rewatch our podcast now because I don't actually take that much in and I realize, fuck, this is good content. Yeah. But I wasn't listening.
I listened to my podcast 3 times. So for us, first of all, I'm living it right now, so I'll listen to it. I then edit it.
Yeah.
And then I usually play it again in my head because number one, I want to hear any mistakes I make or how I can improve.
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm my ideal listener. I love listening to these conversations.
And that's how you know you're making good content, right?
Yeah.
If you're like enjoying listening to it. So yeah, that whole present shift was a massive one. And that's something that I think is going to become more and more important as we get older. We've all seen the social dilemma.
Yeah.
There's so many issues coming up with technology. But I think it's important to go back to our roots. What are we here for? We're here to enjoy these present moments, right? Not constantly think about the past or the future. And I know that's easy for me to say, right? There's rising anxiety, depression, all that kind of thing. But I think it's just something that people should keep in mind. Most of our favorite moments, if you think about this, are present moments, right? If you ask people when they feel the most alive and the most happy, it'll be activities like surfing. Maybe it's going for a run. Maybe it's watching a movie. But it's when they're out of their head and into their body.
Yeah. So we actually did, on this retreat I was on, we did a thing called the happiness curve. And it's an exercise. And we did a life graph.
Okay.
So life graph is where you just get a piece of paper and you draw a y-axis and an x-axis.
Yeah.
And then you just go from 0 to however old you are, so 22 for me. And then you draw your life of ups and downs over like how you felt. And so people will be like, they'll go up and then they'll go down, they'll enter high school, ups, whatever it is, right? And the key thing that every single person in the group had was their biggest ups and their biggest downs were when either a relationship fell apart or they gained a new relationship.
Wow.
And it's
That's
like,
really
so what do, based on this graph, what are the most important things in life?
Yeah.
Relationships and
Exactly.
like the quality of time you're spending with people. There's no graph where it's like I lost lots of money and it dipped.
Yeah.
That dip was pretty small compared to the relationships.
Yeah.
And that was really fascinating.
And I think maybe you've done this exercise before, but essentially it's from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And they essentially get you to try and imagine your own funeral.
Yeah.
And what each of your best friends and family members would say at your funeral.
Write your own eulogy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get a huge sense of your values and what's important to you from that. That was actually what led to me to be considering relationships above all else. If I have to study, if I have to do something, right, I'll usually kind of consider that. But if it's something to do with my brother, I'll prioritize that. And that's led to me having a huge amount more happiness in my life.
And the thing is, if you're happy in a good mental space, you can work harder and more productively.
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in sacrificing your mental health, your social life and everything if you're working hard, because I'll just, someone will have all of that and they'll be able to work harder because they're in a much better space.
I think that comes from a point of knowing yourself. Like, I do have friends that are very kind of sporadic in the way they work hard. So they'll lock themselves up for 3-4 days, just grind out an assignment, grind out a project, and then go out and have fun.
Yeah,
but I'm not like that. I'm very consistent. So I'll have 5-6 hours of study, right, every day, try and be concentrated. I'll have the exercise, I'll have the sleep. If I don't sleep, I feel like shit, right?
Of course.
And there's a lot more research coming out about that and Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, is that the Oura Ring?
Yeah. I use this to track my sleep. I track every
awesome.
morning on a spreadsheet.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm trying to see how it improves.
What's your ideal amount of time?
Well, you're supposed to get 6 to 7 hours, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is what people don't realize, so this tells me how much sleep I actually got.
Yeah.
You'll be in bed for 8 hours. You only get 5 hours sleep.
Yeah, wow.
'Cause you don't realize, and it tells you how long you're awake for, the different types of sleep you get. So I'm usually get between 5-6 hours proper sleep, even though I'm in bed for a longer period of time. And so people be like, yeah, I went to bed at 10 and I got up at 7. And so I got 8 hours sleep or whatever the math is.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You actually only got about 6.
Yeah.
Or 7. Who knows? Depends on the person.
And there's
It's
also
fascinating.
the stuff about how much of that is deep sleep, right?
Yeah, so they have deep sleep, REM is the one you want to get.
Yeah.
I get like 20-30 minutes sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah, which is not much. I get, mainly it's light sleep, and then there's deep. We're getting into the details here, but point is, sleep is important.
Yeah.
And studies are showing that.
Yeah, exactly. And that for me, when I focus again on that bottom-up approach of who I am, bottom-up, what kind of life do I want to live? These are the things that make me happy and make me function at my best. Relationships, exercise, sleep, all that kind of stuff. And then the top-down, everything in the middle just works itself out.
Yeah.
So
you've got those two.
So last year I didn't have any intention of getting an internship, and I got 3 great jobs. I started working with the young change agents. I did an internship at Deloitte. My best mate challenged me to do a bodybuilding comp. I did that, and that whole year I achieved more than I've ever done in my life by focusing on who I am. And I think that when you drive with your values first, good things will happen.
Yeah. And the problem that I see is because you're at uni right now, but you've barely spoken about it. You've spoken about your internships, your job, everything, your mindset and everything. Uni's just like one aspect.
Exactly.
With so many people will be like, that's all I've got.
Yeah.
I'm studying at uni. All right. What else are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm just studying at uni and I work part-time at Woolworths or something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, do you have an internship? Are you working with people? Like, how are you going to get a job? Piece of paper doesn't equal a job now.
Yeah.
In some fields, maybe yes, but the majority is, you need internships, experience, all the stuff that you're talking about. And I just worry for people who just go to uni and just do the bare minimum. They just study, they just get the marks. That's it. They don't make any connections.
Yeah, I really worry about that, especially now. Like, I've got some close friends. They've done everything right. Top marks, top internships and stuff. And even they're struggling. So it makes me think about people that maybe haven't gone as hard at uni or got that at work experience. And there's always that predicament, right? Most people, for most internships, they want experience, but that's hard to get, right?
Yeah.
And these are entry-level jobs. So that first foot in the door, you have to hustle hard to get it.
Connections. How do you get it from the door? Connections.
Exactly.
If you had coffee with 3 people a week, I promise you.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, they talk about when networking, right? When you meet someone, you've not got access to their entire network. So they say the world is connected through 6 people.
Yeah.
So I can tell you how I'm connected to President Obama through 5 people. Because the other week, this guy told us a story about how he's connected to Obama through 4 people.
Yeah.
I know him, so now I'm connected.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's probably unrealistic.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Like, I get access to you. I now know everyone that you know, and you
Yeah.
can introduce me to them, and then bigger and bigger. So if you see 3 people a week, you're not just seeing 3 people. You're seeing like hundreds of people because they can introduce you to X and X.
Yeah.
And if you just have a little call to action, like, I'm looking right now, I just want to get experience in economics and finance or something. And they'll go, okay, cool, I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
And the next person will go, I'll keep an eye out. And the next person will go, oh, I know someone.
Yeah.
And bang.
Exactly.
Now you've got your experience.
And you'll find that at any point in time, there's a lot of employers looking for employees, looking for interns and stuff.
100%.
But there's just this big mismatch between the supply and demand. So, as you said, these things will work out. But something else that I've started to consider a bit more is that in the employment market, there's going to be, as everyone knows, we're all going to do different careers in our lifetimes, 5-6 different careers. And I think that if you are a curious person and you go into let's say hypothetically, I want to get experience in a startup.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's what I want to do in my life. I'm like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I've watched these movies. I want to work for a startup. And then I go intern in a startup and I realize, okay, this isn't for me. I'm not a generalist. I can't do all these things at once. I'd rather specialize in something. And that's something that I think people should do a lot more.
Tasting.
Which is, tasting. Exactly. And you can do that so easily in such a low risk way. You can just be out to someone, hey, can I shadow you for a week?
Yeah.
Or hey, can I work for you for 2 weeks? I'll get you coffee. I'll do whatever for free.
Yeah.
And I just want to get a taste of this experience. And if you can't, there's some industries where you can't quite do that, then you have a coffee with the person.
Yeah.
What's a day in your life like? What's it like working? What's the best part of your work?
Because you might want to be something.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you might be a lawyer because it looks like suits, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize, I just sit at my desk and write and read papers all day or something. And they'll tell you about a day and it might be really exciting. And you go, yes, that's confirmed my goal for being a lawyer. Or they might say, actually, I just sit at a desk all day or whatever it is. And you're going, holy crap, that's not what I thought it was going to be.
So many people realize that what they idealize as a career isn't actually what it's like too late.
The reality,
because they don't taste enough in uni, right?
So tasting is literally one of the most important things I think we should be doing as young people, because it's for 2 weeks, as you mentioned, we did that 2 weeks thing, you might discover what you love. I had a guy who came on, who does uni, and he was doing finance and economics maybe.
Cool.
And but then
sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah, he is. And then really smart, so smart. And then he started a tutoring company as well. Wow.
Cool.
And so basically, he did like these electives you could do at Sydney Uni, like these different electives. He did computer software engineering.
Yep.
He dropped economics and picked it up because he did like a 1 week thing because he loved it so much. And now he's doing computer engineering and finance. Yeah,
it's such an obvious thing as well, right? You don't know what you don't try. And so many of these conceptions we have of what certain jobs are like are usually from TV shows or usually quite romanticized, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to just get your fingers stuck in, actually see what it's like. And again, you don't have to do the taster. You can just grab a cup of coffee with someone. You can go on YouTube and type in what is a day in life of an investment banker.
Yeah.
And what's the lifestyle like, right?
Is it actually like it is in billions, or is it way more boring?
It's a lot of hours. That's all I can tell you. Yeah. It's nothing like it's in billions. And see, that's like a very common thing as well. Like people go billions investment banking. Billions isn't even about investment bankers. It's about hedge funds, which is actually something very different. Investment bankers facilitate transactions in the buying and selling of businesses, M&A, things like that, while investing is a completely different thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I only discovered in like my second year of uni, and I studied that stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
It makes sense. It definitely is hedge funds now that you say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, once again, it's following his personal life mainly, not even the work life.
Yeah.
If it just showed office hours, it'd just be people sitting at a computer for 15 hours a day.
Exactly.
And that's fine if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. So I don't think a lot of these things aren't as sexy as they are in the movies. Yeah. And so it's important to find that out for yourself before you lock yourself into a career that you don't want to do.
Yeah, 100%. And us Gen Zs, young people, we've so many options. I call it the paradox of choice, right? Like when you go on Netflix, you've got so many movies to watch. You'll spend 20 minutes just trying to find a movie, which is crazy. It's the same with career choices. There's so many different pathways now, which on one hand is amazing. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed. What do? You taste things.
But yeah, continue on to that metaphor. I think we've all had that experience. I actually had this a few nights ago where I was overwhelmed with everything to watch on Netflix. And I was like, okay, I'll give one a go for 5 minutes. Yeah. And I realized that, okay, you get a lot more of a sense of what it's going to be like than just reading the description, which is the romanticized version. So I think that's an awesome metaphor.
And I've done that with my parents. Like we'll start watching a movie and we're 20 minutes in and we're just like, I'm not feeling this. This is not it. Let's just switch it.
Yeah. And it's better than spending 40 minutes just scrolling and getting kind of overwhelmed with the amount of choice there are. And coming back to that paradox of choice, they've done experiments that the more choices a person has, the less utility they get from the choice they make, regardless of it, right? So that's something I think that our generation has been stuck with.
100%. But let's move on.
Yeah, cool.
I kind of want to talk about a few things. You mentioned you like bodybuilding and into fitness and stuff, which I'm, big fan of as well.
Yeah.
And So tell us a little about this bodybuilding, and then you also mentioned some stuff about what you think kind of, I guess, men showing emotion and how, I had a viral video on TikTok, which is a lot of my listeners came from this video, I'm pretty sure, and it was all about men showing emotion.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear your perspective on that as a young guy and kind of what you're seeing.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so the bodybuilding was in that period that I mentioned where I just got back from exchange. And my best mate, Adam, I kind of assume that everyone knows him.
Yeah.
We run a podcast together called the Sachin and Adam Show. And that actually started in that 2019 period as well, when I was focusing on who I wanted to be, right? So yeah, came back from exchange and I felt like I wasn't challenging myself. So Adam said to me, like, look, you usually get what you usually, when you try something, you usually do well at it, right? And he's like, let's push you really far out of your comfort zone. We're both big fans of yes theory. And we're like, okay, let's do something really far out of your comfort zone. So he's like, do bodybuilding. And I was like, no, like that's the one thing I'm not going to do. Like I'm a skinny guy. That's just not going to work for me, right? And that day I actually felt so sick. Like I couldn't eat anything. And this was just the idea of this coming up into my head. And Adam kind of said, like, stay with that feeling. And so I did. And I realized that I hadn't felt this scared of something in a very long time. Not uni, nothing jobs. That stuff doesn't faze me that much anymore. But this is something I was actually really scared of.
Which means you should do it.
Yeah, which meant that I should do it. Standing in my undies on a stage. And so that I went off on the journey. So the first 3-4 months was a bulking period. And so I was trying to put on a lot of mass. And then there was a cutting period. So then I got a coach for that cutting period. I think in 12 weeks, I lost 12 kilos.
Wow.
And that was the hardest part of my life. Because then I was doing an internship with Deloitte in their consulting division. I was doing full-time uni and I was doing this bodybuilding comp. And people don't realize that the hardest part about the comp isn't the actual physical activity. It's not getting to the gym and doing your cardio and lifting the weights. It's the food. It's the dieting, right?
That's where I struggle.
Yeah.
So I need to eat 3,000 calories to put on weight. It's like, man, that's so much.
Yeah,
How do I eat that much?
I struggle with that as well. But in the cutting stages, I got down to days when I was on 1,400 calories, right?
Yeah, nice.
And when you're trying to do 2 sessions in a day, which is the morning cardio, the nighttime lift, the full-time uni and the internship, it's a struggle, right? And there was periods where I would see black spots in my vision when I was driving. I couldn't sleep most of that period because I had hunger pains every night. Doing a bodybuilding comp naturally is actually much harder than doing it enhanced. And so, and I was quite frankly a dick to my friends, right?
Yeah.
And the little man downstairs doesn't work anymore, right? Because you get your body's in such survival mode that your hormones actually switch off.
Far out.
So this was a really intense period of my life. And I think after it, my friends were like, we got you back after, because I was just so focused. I was so zoned in. And I had moments of intense, like, why am I doing this? Intense hunger. But I think in those really hard kind of things you do in life, you get these intense moments of euphoria as well, where I was like, fuck, I'm actually doing this. So I got to the comp, did all my posing, finished it off, and it made me realize again what I valued in life, because the whole narcissism of it was really hard for me. I like focusing and working hard on things, but I want to do it for others. Like just working on my own body, it wasn't fulfilling for me at all. And you find that most people in that space have some kind of insecurity or even some slight body dysmorphia that they're trying to get over. So that was that period, and I came out of it really grateful for the experience, because I had the opportunity to manufacture hardship on myself. I didn't have to endure that naturally, which is just an immense blessing. And coming out of that, I literally felt like I could do anything, right? I'd surpassed this thing that was intensely hard, and now most things in my life feel easy, right? And I feel like I got to a point where I'm not constrained by my work ethic. Like I can get through that. So nothing in my life, the only thing that's going to constrain me is the direction I want to go, and that's it. And that was kind of a point where I reached a pretty deep level of confidence, I'd say.
Yeah, so it's going through that discomfort.
Exactly.
Yes Theory's clothing brand is Seek Discomfort.
Exactly.
And I talk about this a lot because I'm the same as you. There's not that many things that make me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The podcast made me feel uncomfortable doing it, but I was so excited at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I did it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, not that much. Now I do it. Now I just really love it. There's no stress at all.
Exactly.
But there's so many. There's public speaking once again scares me. But I also am really excited to go up on stage. There's not many things in life that really make me feel uncomfortable. Yeah. And so I'm always trying to look for them. Public speaking to a lot of people is definitely one of them.
Yeah. And it comes down to when psychologists treat phobias, right? What do? Exposure therapy. That's exactly what all this is. It's exposure therapy, right? If you're scared of public speaking, it's going to suck. And I can completely understand how hard that is. But again, exposure therapy, do little increments, start doing it. And those things, there's so many things in life you can't think your way out of. You can't think your way out of a bodybuilding competition, or you can't think your way onto stage for a bodybuilding competition, like how you can't think your way out of a public speaking thing, right? You have to go out and do it. There's so many moments where we just have to get out of our head and into our body.
Yeah, and it's building that mental toughness.
Exactly.
Because our generation is so bad with mental toughness. We're so weak, I feel like. Because everyone, the example I've been talking about recently was girls in high school, and guys, but more often girls, will post like a new profile picture on Facebook or Instagram or something. And everyone will comment. All the girls will swamp it like, oh, so beautiful. There's all positive comments. And so now they're so used to getting positive comments. As soon as they hear one little like insult or anything that's not positive, they take it so personally.
Yeah.
And then half the girls are just commenting on their photos because they know that if they comment on their photos, then that girl's going to comment when they change their profile picture. And it's like, God, come on.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I think that most people growing up in Australia, and I think it's just part of the experience of being a teenager, right? Maybe not in that kind of specific situation, but everyone goes through periods of thinking really hard of what people like, caring a lot about what people think about them. And I was definitely like that in high school. For the majority of my life, I've been a people pleaser. I was in this group in high school, which was that classic kind of jockey kind of group, right? Yeah. And in hindsight, I didn't belong there. But I'm really grateful because that's obviously led to a lot of learnings about socializing and things like that. But coming out of high school, I realized that if I wanted to do what I wanted to do in my life, if I wanted to create this social impact fund, if I wanted to make a meaningful contribution towards reducing equality of opportunity, you can't thrive with that mindset. Yeah. And I remember, this sounds really cheesy, and I actually kind of on the fence of bringing it up, but when I was in Africa at the end of 2017, I was on a safari, right? I was just with my family, and I saw this lion just like lying there, right? It was just like sleeping, things were going on around it. And I remember this quote that I saw once. It's, lions don't lose sleep over opinion of sheep.
Yeah, right.
And it's just one of those classic like self-development-y kind of cringy quotes. But in that moment, I actually had a big shift. I was like, if any of us want to do something, if we want to put, like, when we put out our podcast content, right, there's gonna be some people that are like, oh, what are those guys doing? Like,
I get 10, 50 of those comments a day.
Really?
On TikTok. I mean,
Okay.
when you put out content on TikTok, educational, people, their fences are up as soon as they see something educational.
Yeah.
And they always judge a 30-second clip.
Yeah.
Instead of listening to the whole 40-minute episode, they'll judge it off a 30-second clip and just say some stupid stuff.
And if you weren't comfortable with having those people, even like putting yourself out there, none of this would have happened, right? You wouldn't be able to share all these awesome learnings with the younger generation.
And can I just say, I was still scared. Like, I think a lot of people think successful people and people put themselves out there, like you and I with the podcast, we just do it.
Yeah.
I still had doubts.
Yeah.
I was still scared to start the podcast. Yeah. It took me months and months of planning. I planned for way too long. It was still scary because I knew as soon as I put that out there, all my friends were going to talk about me in the group chat. They were everyone was going to be, talking about what's he doing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I knew I'd get comments on this page, and that I was still scared to do it.
Yeah.
They say, the hero and the coward have the same fears, but the hero does it anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's like
100%.
You got to understand that everyone has that in their head.
Yeah.
You just got to fight through it.
Yeah, and it's just about, again, getting out of your mind and taking that first step. What's the first step? Registering a website name or a YouTube name, right?
Yeah.
Once you get those first steps, you build momentum. But our podcast, this is actually a funny story. Our podcast came out of something like not like that at all. We didn't plan it. So Adam and I were both in economics history lecture. It was so boring. Like, I feel like economics history lecture, this guy like never changed his clothes. Like every time he was wearing the exact same thing.
Or the like voice, the tone of his voice.
Oh, it was it was so monotone. Anyways, it was a 3-hour lecture and we're getting so bored in it. And so halfway through, Adam and I were like, okay, we can't stay here. And we're like, okay, why don't we just go talk about our university exchange? So we saw that Sydney Uni had a podcast studio. We just jumped in there. We just chatted about our exchange. Watched it. I don't think we even watched it after. We're like, oh, there's people that can benefit from this. And then we posted it up and that one did quite well. Like, people like really liked the content and they liked us chatting.
No way.
We're like, okay, cool. Why don't we like interview other people? And then the next week we just found one of our friends, interviewed him, and it started from that. Yeah. But I can definitely, with that first moment when you put something out, and even now when I'm posting things on my story, when I'm advertising certain podcasts, I'm like, oh, is this being annoying and stuff like that? Yeah. But then I think about the other shit I see on Instagram. There's people posting photos of their drinks and like a day at the beach, right?
Or boomerang of cocktails.
Exactly. And we're doing this because we actually want to add value to people, right? We're doing this because we believe that we're not doing this for ourselves, right? In a way it is, but we're doing this because we generally believe that sharing these learnings can change people's lives, right?
That's why I started my podcast.
Yeah.
As you say, yes, there's ego, I think. Yeah. It's cool seeing myself get growth and put myself out there. Yeah. And I feel like I'm building my personal brand and stuff. But I do this because this is what I wish I had when I was younger.
100%.
And it's like, I honestly believe if you listen to every single episode of my podcast, your life would change. It might sound cheesy, but it would change your mindset. Like, the podcast has changed me just by interviewing people.
Yeah.
Because I don't bring on people that I already know.
Yeah.
I bring on to learn from them and people just can learn with me. I'm kind of like more of a guide instead of an expert.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I really like your conversational style. I think it's really, yeah, again, if I had this when I was younger, I don't know what would have happened. But yeah. And I think there is an ego element, but it's also like we're putting this content out there because we want people to learn from it. And that's not something you should feel bad about, right? You're like all of our attention's getting captured anyway by Facebook, Google, by ads, by a lot of kind of meaningless content on the internet, people trying to make themselves... people trying to essentially facilitate FOMO by posting where they are and whatever. And if we're trying to educate people, I don't think that should be seen as annoying.
No. I mean, people find it annoying, but whatever. You know, they say if you have the mindset of out of every 10 people you meet, one person's going to hate you. And you got to understand that's reality.
Yeah.
Like, you can't please everyone.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good odds, 1 out of 10.
And I love what you said before about that we still have those feelings. We still have those feelings of doubt and stuff like that. Even when you just said that just then, that 1 in 10's not going to like me, I was like, my brain's like, fuck, like I want everyone to like me.
Same with me, yeah. It's like when people, you know, I get a lot of crappy comments on TikTok or stuff, they don't bother me. It's when people like put respectful comments in they'll say like something that's actually quite smart.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh man, that actually gets to me.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone saying this is stupid or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Got a little bit sidetracked there.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back into kind of men's and emotional stuff. So I'll give you a little recap of what happened to me. So I launched TikTok like 3 months ago for my podcast. And about a week into it, I posted a clip from episode 16 with a guy called Lee True, who's a survivalist expert. He spent a year alone in the bush. He runs retreats for men and for kids with father son retreats and stuff. And he's a trained psychotherapist. And we got into this conversation about how men really struggle to show emotion. And this is something you mentioned before our conversation about what you think is the new being a tough man. What is the new version of being a tough man?
Vulnerability is alpha.
Yeah.
I fundamentally believe that, right? And I don't want to sound egotistical here, but I think a lot of the most confident people I know are the people that can be open, right? Yeah. We have this whole... I think this movie-esque American mentality that like the tough guys are the big muscly guys and stuff, the good looking. And I think there's an element of that that's always going to remain, right? But I think we're moving more towards a time when it's true confidence, when you can be expressive of what you actually feel, what your values are, and who you are as a person. I think that's true confidence. And I think that that's what attracts other people. That attracts friendships, that attracts romantic partners, when you're honest about your virtues, essentially.
And you said this before when you opened up and like, I went on a date, didn't go too well. That's being vulnerable to a random stranger. And
exactly.
That builds rapport really quickly.
Yeah.
And you bang on the money there about like, I love James Bond, but he's bad to idolize, right? And they do show how he's like depressed and he's got a tough life and everything. But growing up as a boy, every single alpha male or the main character who you aspire to be always is pretty good looking, has lots of muscles. He always gets the girl effortlessly. Yeah. Like he doesn't try to get the girl, the girl just comes to him. And so that's kind of the image we have in our head of what it takes to be a man. Yeah. And Brene Brown says, and do you know Brene Brown? Yeah. So she's like, showing vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Yeah.
I just believe that on a spiritual level, because everything that's happened in my life for the last 3 years has been kind of an example of that. And I can even speak to the other sides of that. Like I had 2 friends last year who took their own life.
You had 2 friends who took their life?
Yeah, in 1 year. And one of them, none of his friends knew. None of us knew what was going on. There was a few people that knew, but you just couldn't tell. And I think that we hear so much about that now, the are you okay stuff, whatever. But I think there still needs to be this fundamental shift. I see it still in so many friend groups in university, where it's just like every weekend you're just going out like... Boys, we're talking about girls, we're talking about this, we're talking about what we're going to do in the weekend.
Drugs, alcohol, girls.
We're not talking about how we're feeling, right? Yeah. And I think that's like the hallmark of a really deep relationship or a deep connection with someone, is when you can be vulnerable, when you can share exactly how you're feeling. And again, like this shouldn't be seen as weak, because that's what builds better connections. I guarantee you, the best people the people you look up to, the most charismatic people, they're going to be open. That's how you truly connect with someone.
Yeah, like this retreat I went on, I didn't know anyone. 9 of us went. I didn't know a single person, and I built relationships with them in this 2 days we did this retreat. Yeah, like better relationships with them than I have with like some of my friends I've known for 10 years.
Yeah, wow.
Because we did that Lifegraph thing, and then we had to look at each other's Lifegraph and said, what happened here? Yeah, what happened here? Well, this is when I lost my job. Yeah, this is when I got my heart broken and I was depressed for 3 months. This is here, and we went through that all. We did exercises. I won't go into it too much, but like just build, and we just had deep conversations. Yeah, it was a safe place where the deep conversations were like, you came into the retreat to have deep conversations, so you just do it. Yeah, and the environment was very safe, so it was easy to do it. So you knew there's going to be no judgment or any backlash.
Yeah, and vulnerability doesn't have to be sharing a negative part of your life as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah,
It can essentially be, because it's sometimes seen as arrogant to show confidence, right? And I think that if you show that you're genuinely confident about something, you feel good about something, that shouldn't be looked down upon either, right? You're sharing who you are and you're expressing who you are as a person. Right?
Or it's arrogant. Like, people go into job interviews and they'll be like, so what are your weaknesses? And they're like, yes, I've practiced this. These are my weaknesses. And then they'll go, what are your strengths? And they'll go, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you not know your strengths? Because they don't want to come across as arrogant or cocky, but it's like, you need to know your strengths.
And in Australia, I think we have a particular problem with this. We definitely have tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, tall poppy syndrome.
And America is the other side of the coin. And sometimes, personally, I think it can be too much there. There's too much of this like materialistic, expressive nature, but I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing something good in Australia, you shouldn't feel bad to talk about it, right? A lot of people wait for someone to discover it and say like, oh, well done, whatever. They're waiting for that praise. But if you feel good about something, it can even be just like, I'm feeling good today.
Yeah.
Like, I'm feeling happy today. Or I'm going on a date with this girl. It went really well. Like, I connected with this person. Like, me and my best friend Adam, if the average person saw how much we message a day, they'd be like, oh my God, it's like a journal. It's literally a journal of every thought that comes out. More me to him, because a lot of people say this, that I literally use people as a journal. It's just like, but
so do I actually. I bounce off people.
Yeah. And it's just like, when you get your thoughts across, there's this really, really deep feeling that's beautiful when you know that someone else knows who you are. Like, it really knows who you are. And that only comes from openness and vulnerability.
Yeah. And it's something I'm working on, because I really struggle like to get vulnerable. I feel like I guess my dad's quite emotionally cut off, and my granddad, holy shit, that generation is so emotionally cut off.
Yeah.
Like, just the way they grew up. And then my dad's quite emotionally cut off, not as bad, and then it comes onto me.
Yeah.
And so I've done stuff where, like, we did a father's son retreat when that was beautiful. They opened up. And this camp I just went on, like, we do some amazing exercises. By day 5, they're doing the most emotional, exercise where everyone's like crying.
Yeah.
And it's like really cool. And it's like, there's no judgment at all. Like, everyone feels safe to, and you don't have to cry. It could even be something like you mentioned, like, how's your day? And you say, mate, my day was great. I just met all these cool people this morning, and then I did this.
Yeah.
The average person would say, yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think again it's exposure therapy, right? So for me, I went through a phase where I literally tried to, when I meet someone, if we're sitting down for lunch, or even if it's a date or something like that, right? Within the first 30 to 40 minutes, I want to get across who I am as a person.
Yeah.
I want to get across my values. I want to get across this maybe funny kind of semi-polarizing story.
Yeah.
Just to make them laugh, or just to build that connection. And I think if we focus more so and see everyone that we interact with as a potential someone that we can connect with deeply.
It's a door, right?
Yeah.
See someone as a door.
Yeah. See someone as a door. And when you see someone as a door, share your values. Share who you are. And know who you are. First of all, to share who you are, you need to know who you are. And that comes down to what we talked about before, with that kind of deep work in terms of planning your eulogy, or really reflecting on what you want.
Yeah.
But so I think this comes down to what most people say about things like love and connection, right? It's like, love yourself, know thyself, right? Know what you want to do, and then openly talk about that with other people.
And the doors are open.
You will build the most beautiful relationships you never thought were possible. In high school, I didn't think I could have relationships like I do now. I didn't think I could have friendships like I do now.
Neither did I, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I had 1 or 2 friendships, like, and it's like, yeah, it's just so different when you meet these sort of people. And it's hard to, it sounds stupid if you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to people say, it's like, oh, I love my friends and stuff. It's like, but once you get into this connection where you mentioned you're messaging Adam every day, like a journal. Yeah. I don't even think I have friends. I have small group chats, but I don't have a one-on-one relationship that strong, I don't think. Yeah. Which is amazing. Yeah. I'm jealous. Yeah.
and I think that also comes down to, I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcast before, the sum of the 5 friends, right? The sum of the 5 friends you spend the most time with. And that was also what caused that big shift for me after high school. Because I found people that were ambitious, they had this zest for life, but they also like partying. Like, I still have this pretty crazy side of me that still likes partying, going out, doing weird stuff, right? And I found that balance. And so I feel like that also accelerated my growth as well, just being around like-minded people.
It's the differences when you go partying. You know those people you go partying with, and they'll stay out till 3 or 4, and then they've completely wiped out their Saturday because they're hungover the whole day. It's like, you can still party, just go to bed at 1 or 2 instead of 5 or 6. Yeah. And you've still got the whole day. Exactly. Go to bed at 1, wake up at 9, and you've got an entire day. Go to the beach afterwards, grab some breakfast or something. Yeah. Instead of losing your entire weekend. Yeah. I mentioned a guy I just met. He's going to come on the show. We're going to talk about how from 19 to 24, So 5 years living in London, he basically every single weekend he would not go out without a bag of cocaine.
Yeah.
Or a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Every single weekend.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people like that now, right? It's so common. I think your audience will kind of be exposed to this as they get older.
Yes.
Right?
They'll start to see it soon.
Yeah. And you see a shift, right? And I'm starting at Deloitte next year. A lot of my friends are in the corporate world. You see it a lot, right?
Our corporate world is, that's huge.
And even in lockdown, like a lot of people using their JobKeeper money for that kind of stuff, right? And that's a whole nother kind of issue and something we can probably go on another day. But yeah, the people you spend time with are going to be the people you become. And
100%.
It's so cliche. I remember listening to these kinds of things when I was 18 and I'd be like, oh, fuck off. You say that all the time. People say those things. But you realize that some of those messages are bullshit, but a lot of them you stick with, right?
The same one was, I heard this a lot as a kid and I was always just like, no, shut up. Like, I don't agree with it. And it was like, it doesn't matter how much money you earn. Or like money doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm just like, when you're a kid, I had no money.
Yeah.
I was earning $14 an hour working at a pizza delivery.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would love to have an extra $500 I could get that PlayStation or whatever it is. Like money matters. But then you get to older and you start earning a little bit of money. All you need is like, $40,000 a year to start coming in. You've got that kind of baseline expenses and you're like, okay, now like money doesn't matter. I haven't made a single dollar from the podcast.
Yeah.
But I love doing it.
Yeah. I'm actually going to challenge you on this because I had the opposite shift. So all the way up until maybe third year uni, I was like, money doesn't matter, right? Even as a young kid, I was like, money doesn't matter. I think that came from a point of privilege. I was like, okay, I never want to make a lot of money now. And I actually do now. And do you know why?
Sorry, well, money matters, but it shouldn't be your priority.
I see money as a tool of impact.
Yes,
right?
same with me.
So I never before. I don't care about materialistic things, right? I want to be comfortable, but I never like materialism doesn't mean anything to me, right? But I watched this Stanford commencement speech by a guy called Chamath, and he has this fund called Social Capital, and essentially what they do is they invest in companies that are going to change the world and work on the quality of opportunity, right? Yeah. And what that made me realize is that we have a toolkit of ways in which we can change the world, right? We have our connections, we have our own self, our own abilities, we have our, let's say, our university degree that will set us up for a job, or our past work experiences. But there's also money, right? Money, we live in a capitalistic society, right? Money, now I conceptualize it as not something that we can buy things with. It's a flow to change impact. This can flow to build bridges in developing countries. This can flow towards funding the newest companies that are going to change the world. This can flow to vaccines and research, right? It's a flow. It's this thing that, and this is what I've learned from talking to a lot of people that are older than me, is that billionaires and stuff, people that have profound impacts, don't see it as this, oh, I can buy 5 coffees with this. Oh, I can have 5 beers with this. They see it as this flow of impact, which is how I've started to conceptualize it more. And that's a big shift for my mentality, because I used to be so scared of money. I used to be like, no, I don't want to become one of those capitalistic people. I never want to but you don't have to be, right? You can use it as a tool.
100% agree. And because, I mean, they say up until $75,000 in Sydney, that's what you need to live. Anything else is kind of bonus or whatever. 100%. Because I tell people, start investing young. Doesn't have to be crazy stocks. Just invest in safe stocks or do something with your money. Look at a property and all that sort of stuff. I haven't done that because I just keep it on my bank account because I'm investing into the business. Because I know if I can put more money into the business, I can grow the podcast, grow my personal brand. That means I can reach more people and hopefully have a bigger impact. Yeah. And I would love to start a social. I want to do I don't know if it's not for profit, but I want to do stuff where it's like I want to help clean the Great Barrier Reef. I have an idea where you could have a year of kids going there for
That's
a gap
awesome.
year, and we can teach them during night, and during the day they just clean it up and just, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I see money exactly the same as a tool to get to that.
Yeah. And it's important to not to say it's the only tool, right? And I think it's also what your intention is with money, right? I think it's completely fine if you want to have a massive mansion and whatever, but that's just not for me, right? Yeah. I just see it as a flow for impact.
Yeah. There's this goal that a lot of people have. Actually, I reckon you might have had it. I've had it as well. I want to be a millionaire by 25 or I want to be a millionaire by 30 or something. Yeah. It's like, why? Yeah. Why do you want to be a millionaire? I don't know. I just want to be a millionaire because it's money. It's
I think it's important reframing that. Let's say there will be a lot of people that want to be a millionaire because of the ego aspect, because of the car, which is fine, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a millionaire impact-wise, right? And let's say you grow your podcast immensely, right? You're still not making $1, but you could have a millionaire's kind of impact. Yeah. And I think that's so much more powerful, and that's probably what's going to give you more fulfillment in the long run. And you change
it. So I don't want to be a millionaire by 25. I want to have impacted 1 million lives by I'm 25. Yeah. I want to impact 1 million young Australian lives by the time I'm 25. That doesn't... and if you can impact 1 million lives, you can make money.
And something I want to say to your audience is this, okay? if you're trying to build wealth, remember we live in a capitalist economy. What works well in a capitalist economy? Capital, right? Get ownerships of things. So many people when they're young are like, okay, I'm going to make lots of money. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to become an investment banker, whatever, right? Yes, you can make a decent amount of money there. You're going to be trading a lot of your hours for time.
I was about to say you're trading time for money.
Yeah. But we live in a society that rewards the accumulation of capital. Remember that, right?
And capital, just to clarify, is like
ownership,
a property or it's stocks. It's something that you own that is usually generating money when you're asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. And that's what's going to build long-term wealth.
Yeah.
So just keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of people you can only get wealth through a salary, but you don't want to be trading your time for money for the rest of your life.
No, exactly. And that's why we're lucky in Australia. We have super fund, which is, you have to invest 10% of anything you earn. Yeah. For a business owner, I mean, I've got to pay my super, which is so annoying because I want to have it now. So I've got to pay $1,500 every few whatever. Yeah. But yeah, and do you know, just actually really quickly talk about what capitalist society is? I feel like I didn't know what it was until 20 or something. Do we learn about capitalist society in school?
Probably not.
I don't recall learning what it was. And it seems like quite important.
Yeah. So there's two major economic systems, which I'm sure everyone would have heard of, right? There's capitalism and there's communism.
Yes.
Okay. And so communism is essentially when everything is centrally planned, right? So the government centrally plans everything. And if you think of things like universal basic income, that's essentially a communist kind of ideology. It's where everything, the pie is split up evenly by every single member, no matter what they contribute, right? Yeah. That's classic Marxism or communism.
And what this means is if I work my ass off 1,000 times, way more harder than you, I'm going to get paid the same though. Yeah. And that's where it kind of falls apart.
Yeah. And in the past, it hasn't really worked. It's a beautiful ideology in theory, right? But it just hasn't worked. You look at when China tried to become communist back in the 50s, right? Yeah. There was a massive starvation, right? Because the government took more of the pie for themselves. They had the villagers didn't have any incentives to work hard because why would you work hard if you're just going to give the grain to the government, right?
Exactly.
And then the government was demanding lots and lots of grain. The villagers couldn't do it. They started lying about it. There was a massive grain shortage. And that was one of the greatest famines the world has ever seen. People think 20 to 30 million people died there, right? Wow. So that's one side of the equation. Then the other side of the equation, you have capitalism, which is essentially an ideology where on the most extreme side, that there's not that much government intervention and the free markets do everything. So
it's the American dream, right?
Yeah. So everything's on supply and demand.
Yeah.
And as you said, America is one of the biggest capitalist economies. And so in these economies, capital works for you. If you're the person that owns the machines, if you're the person that owns the factories, right? That's how you accumulate wealth. You're not going to accumulate wealth through your labor, right? The capital and labor are the two kind of big things that contribute to growth. But if I can go into a quick spiel here, I think the ideal society is somewhere in the middle, right? Nothing's fully capitalist, nothing is fully communist, right? We have a social welfare system here in Australia, right? That's somewhere in the middle.
So we're capitalist society in Australia.
No one is completely capitalist, right? But we're a capitalist society. But we still reward innovation, right? We still reward capital accumulation, right?
If you work hard and smart, you can make lots of money.
Yeah. So we're probably here, right? And then if you look at countries like Scandinavia, they're a bit more in the center, right? Because they have more redistribution. Yeah. I think their tax rates are pretty high. They're 50%. So that's that distribution element that whatever I make, I'm giving more of that pie back to the government to redistribute. Right? So most countries are somewhere in the middle. America is maybe a bit more to this side.
The problem is I guess I think capitalism works under the assumption that everyone starts at a fair baseline. Yeah. So everyone's born and we all start from the same thing, which isn't reality.
That's what I'm passionate about, right? So it's just how do we create this same starting line? And we probably never will, but we can do things along the way to mitigate these differences. And then you're only constrained. I want to create a world where we're only constrained by our work ethic, right? And what we're willing to do for these things, right? I think we should reward innovation. That's how we move forward. That's how we get better medical innovation. That's how we get things like electric wheelchairs for my brother, right? Those things may not have been built under a communist system, right? It's people working hard to accumulate wealth and capital. So I think there's a beautiful element of it, but I still think that right now, where we're heading towards, the capitalism in America, inequality is at an all-time high.
Well, I think Black Lives Matter was a classic example of actual inequality. Yeah. If you took it, because obviously they want to reduce racism. Yeah. But how do we do that?
Yeah. Education is a big equalizer, is the biggest equalizer we have. And that was a lot of the argument with defund the police. They said we should redistribute that money towards these kind of communities. What I say is that in most cases, when police have been reduced, there's been an increase in crime, which I think is a risk. What I say is that we should tax these big conglomerates, these big multinationals more like Amazon and stuff, and then do both at the same time, right?
Yeah.
We can incrementally defund the police. Hopefully we should get to a stage where we don't need so much police presence in black neighborhoods. But realistically, where we're at right now, as you said, there's still a lot of crime, and we still need to protect people in those neighborhoods.
But there's crime because it's poor education. Exactly. They don't have much money, so they resort to stealing, and the whole community is just like there's drugs that easily accessible. Yeah, and so it's just the whole thing. It's like a loop that's just caught.
Exactly. But what I'm trying to say here is we shouldn't defund it completely, right?
For sure.
We should redirect some of that funding into the education so we can close that gap, and then the police will incrementally reduce, and these communities will thrive more, right? But
there we go, solved.
Yeah, there's a lot more grey areas than that, but that's fundamentally where I believe there.
Yeah, and so that's just, it's great because, I swear for the longest time I didn't know what communism and capitalism was, and my parents had to teach me.
No one talks to you about it.
Exactly,
right?
And it's super important because it is, as you mentioned, it's more of a scale. It's not you're just communists or you're just capitalists. You're in between. Like, we're less capitalists in America because we have healthcare and we have benefits. So we're starting at a more even playing field. Australia's more like bring everyone up successfully, as opposed to the American dream, which is where you're individualistic and you can make it if you put in the work. Yeah, which is great. Yeah, if you put in the work. But
I've got a lot of friends that want to move to America now because they think that their potential is constrained here, right? Because again, there's a lot more capital floating around. If you want to start a business, it's a
market.
There is more opportunity, but then again, there's those costs, right? Yeah. It's like how do you want to live? What do you want to put up with? If you want to, like, the countries with the highest quality of life in the world are in Scandinavia,
and Switzerland and stuff,
and they're more towards that kind of socialist kind of ideology. So it is really interesting.
It is fascinating. Oh, we could do a whole episode on that almost. Maybe we should have you back on for an economics episode. But yeah, this has been amazing. But before we wrap up, I always ask all my guests one final question. And it's basically, what would your number one piece of advice be for the younger generation? It can be anything. It doesn't have to be anything we've spoken about today. It can be anything, but what would your number one piece of advice be?
Yeah. Okay. So I got two things here. So the first one is the presence piece. I fundamentally believe this. I think everyone should start thinking about what moments they feel like they're really in the moment, right? What is their nows? Are they constantly in the future or the past, or are they actually in the present moment? So I think that's something everyone should think about. And the second thing I want to say is that through my short 21 years on Earth, the two biggest things that I've realized that set someone up for success in whatever their own definition is two things, right? The first is finding what you're curious about. If it's talking to people, if it's, photography, whatever, find what you're curious about. And the gap year may be an awesome time to do that.
Yeah,
as we've talked about, exposure and tasting, right? Find what you're curious about and make sure you're genuinely curious. Make sure there's no element of, it's transactionally curious. Like, I want to work for Byron, so I'm going to go do this thing with there. If I'm actually curious about him, let me reach out to him, right? The second thing is a growth mindset, right? Try and accumulate this feeling that you can do anything you want to do, anything that you set your mind to, and you're only constrained by your work ethic. And I think that again only comes to exposing yourself to things. Just get out of your comfort zone, and I think after a few periods or years of trying to do this, you'll get this feeling, which I think is the most liberating feeling in the world, and that's like, I can achieve anything I set my mind to. Yeah. And again, I know that sounds cliche, but there's a good TED talk on this, on the growth mindset. But I think that's the one thing that sets people up, right?
Everyone I've had on the show talks about growth mindset.
Yeah.
And I talk about it all the time. It's like, once again, I understand it sounds cheesy. It sounds almost like a cult. Like, everyone's like, you got to get a growth mindset. And it's like, it's up to you. If you don't do it, that's fine. Yeah. But we are, trying to give you advice. Yeah. You need to have a growth mindset.
Yeah. All the lessons out there, right? On this podcast, there's so many lessons out there. People just need to go out and do it, right? And taste things. And another thing is, I think just for this generation is get out of your head and into your body more. Yeah. Or get out of your head and into action, right? We can go through so many scenarios in our minds of how these certain things will play out and stuff like that. Like, before this, I was like, okay, how's this podcast going to play out, right? It's our hardware, right? We're trying to survive, and that anxiety can creep up. But instead, like, as soon as I started doing this, there was not all that went, right? It's just like, get out of your head and into your body.
Yeah. And it's same in public speaking. I remember once I was like so nervous to go up, and then like 10 seconds as he was calling me up, I switched and I was really excited. I was like, I just want to get up there. Yeah. As soon as I got up there, it's like not gone, but it's just like you're in the zone. Yeah. And it's just, it's exactly what you say. Like, anxiety is at an all-time high. Every second person I know has high levels of anxiety, according to them, even if they're not diagnosed and it's self-diagnosed. They talk about it all the time. Yeah. you're stuck in your head. It's the growth mindset. But yeah, Sachin, thank you so much. For anyone interested, listen to podcasts, find out more about you.
Yeah, so it's called the Sachin and Adam Show.
Yeah.
And essentially what we do is, me and Adam, we're extremely curious people, and we reach out to leaders in the field, usually business, sometimes psychologists and stuff, and it's more of an interview style. So we ask them questions and we get their advice to 18 to 25-year-olds. It's probably a little bit of an older demographic than most of your audience, but it's more interview style. And we just focus on getting good guests on and sharing their learnings and bridging that inequality of information gap.
Yeah, I love it. And there's the two of you, so that brings a dynamic to it. You've got the two hosts.
And we're both as intense as each other. So you may,
I'll show them. I'll have Adam on later on. So we'll
cool.
See you then. But anyway,
thanks so much.
Thanks
this
so
has
much
been
for coming
awesome. Sweet.
That's it for this episode of the Driven Young podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the entire episode. That means the world to me. And if you got some value out of it, please shoot me a message on Instagram or reach out to me. Or I would love for you to leave a rating or review on this podcast. So make sure you are subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.